here? Okay, and it's recording. Okay, it's recording. Good. Can you turn off the light? This one. Thank you. Thank you. How do I get to Cyber Campus? Okay. Okay, so far so good.
Continue to notice black box on the left, top black box, that black box.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, when this starts, 10 o'clock.
So real quick, there's a waiting room.
Yeah, oh, you got to turn off the radio. Yeah, I'll cover that. Thank you. It's already in?
I don't know why this is not automatic.
Yeah, it was last time. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Okay. Thank you. 10 o'clock. And, okay, so smart attendance, and there you go. And start smart attendance, and your number is 160160. I feel like I'm at a bingo hall, reading off bingo numbers or with this microphone. Okay. I had lots of videos to show you. Typically, when I start the class on a more normal time, we have extra time, and I start showing YouTube videos. But by the time we get set up for Cyber Campus and everything, it's time to start the regular class. So I'll show the videos on Friday from my office. Okay, so I think exciting time these days with the European Union. And let me open up my file here, and hopefully I can do that without much trouble. And so go here, and let's see, we go here, and and where is the lesson? The lesson plan for today is, let me find the lesson plan. Where's the lesson plan? Lesson plan. And it should say lesson plan, and I don't see lesson plan. Where's lesson plan? I'm trying to get myself organized here, and in terms of it's what? What did I do with? Oh, there it is. Okay. So, all right. So this is the lesson plan, and I wanted to show you, of course, that the people that are writing for your, the authors of your chapter for chapter 3 are real human beings. And so you see here, there, no, that's not the run I wanted actually. Here is your Greek author, just to show you that he's a real human being. And just to get this also set up and running here. So far so good. Yeah.
So my name is Dr. Theophanis Exadakoulos. I am a senior lecturer in European politics from the University of Surrey in the UK, and I'm also co-editor of the JCMS annual review.
And that's a good thing.
Pleasure to
so I don't want to just, I don't want to go through it. It's not worth. I just wanted to show you that these are real people.
With you.
And he's one of the 3 authors. And another author is this person. One of the 3 authors of your chapter for this week. And so just again to see him function. And Schumann, Robert Schumann, was the founder of the European Coal and Steel Community, one of the founders.
Most people take it for granted that they are a citizen of their country.
And so
But
it's
if
not
you
really
are a
relevant to
migrant
this
who wants to build
course material.
in a new country,
I just wanted to show you. You always can, of course, go watch those on your own after class, after I post the material on the cyber campus. So I'm very interested in the European Union because it is a key to peace in world affairs, not just in Europe, but around the whole world, because challenges to peace come from not just China and the United States, but they also come from China and Russia, but they also come from the United States. So here are the notes that I presented to you, and I want to make sure I show you those notes because I want to make sure that I relate my ideas to you regarding the information in the notes, to show how the information in the notes are important. And let me start off a little more interactively by going back to the Zoom video, and I want to make sure I don't close something that I don't want to close. And so I set up some polls, and that's polling, right? For polls, surveys, questions, things like that. Oh, okay, that's right. So let me close that. 3 dots. Oh, here. Okay, thank you. Here? Okay, so let me see. And I had set up some polls for you. And so let me ask you this question. So please respond to the following statement. Europeanization makes nationalism stronger in Europe, not weaker. And so I ask you whether you strongly agree, neutral, cannot decide, disagree, strongly disagree. And I rushed really fast through the last class about how, for example, Catalan nationalism in Catalonia is arguably encouraged by European integration. I don't know, any of you been to Spain? Anybody traveled to Spain? Someday you'll go to Spain. Everybody goes to Barcelona someday. Barcelona is the capital of Catalonia, right? And in 1992, Barcelona hosted the Summer Olympics. And, you know, they have that beautiful, strange cathedral designed by that architect Gaudi there. And so after the pandemic goes over, I'm sure someday you'll go to Spain. And the Catalans are highlighted in George Orwell's book, Homage to Catalonia. George Orwell wrote 1984, and you're all familiar with 1984 because of its attack on communism. But he wrote another book called Homage to Catalonia about his fighting in the Spanish Civil War. And as I mentioned at the last class, Catalonia was a big focus of Francisco Franco's attacks because Catalan nationalism was becoming strong there. And Francisco Franco, the dictator, justified his coup, his attack on the Republic, to put down Catalan nationalism and Basque nationalism. And it was brutal. Hundreds of thousands of people died. The fascists from Italy and the Nazis from Germany intervened to help Franco win. My grandfather's brother was one of the 60,000 Italian soldiers that Mussolini sent to Spain. And so there is this topic of what happened in Catalonia and what happened in the Spanish Civil War has never been fully addressed. Only now are they talking about it. Like in South Korea, only recently is South Korea talking about who did what under Syngman Rhee, and who did what during the Civil War, and who killed who and who benefited, and who was Chinilpa, and who collaborated with the Japanese. Very sensitive topics in Korea. That's how sensitive these topics are in Spain. And only in the last 15 years are the Spanish beginning officially to discuss this topic. Only since the socialist government came into power 3 years ago have they again begun to talk about these topics. And European integration has encouraged Catalans to believe, many argue, that, you know, we don't really need to be part of Spain to have a good economy. You know, in the old days, when countries were preparing for war, fighting war, and recovering from war, you needed a strong national government to have a big market for your goods. And Catalonia is economically more developed and advanced than the rest of Spain, except for the Basque Country. The Basque Country and Catalonia are economically more developed, and they tend to stereotype, look down upon the rest of Spain as backward, traditional, lazy parasites who tax wealthy, hardworking Catalonians to subsidize these lazy, stupid peasants. The way Northern Italians tend to stereotype Southern Italians. When you take my classes, you know I'm interested in political psychology, and nationalism and stereotyping. I'm just describing the stereotypes and emotion. They go together. They all associate with each other. So, and of course, this has made Spanish nationalists in Madrid, and particularly located in the Spanish army, very unhappy. So as the Catalans carry out their struggles for self-determination, it's making other nationalists within Spain, particularly those people who think Franco was great, Franco did a good job, Franco saved us from communism, communism is evil, Franco was fighting Stalin and his spies and agents, like Syngman Rhee was justifying his actions in South Korea. Look how terrible communism is in North Korea. Franco is a hero. He should be a hero, not condemned by these nasty Catalan nationalists. So you see, with Catalan nationalism becoming more prominent because of European integration, it is causing more conflict within Spain between people who defend Franco and people who hate Franco. So that was this this entry to this exercise, this news report about how Puigdemont, one of the Catalan political figures, fled after he led Catalonia to declare independence 2 or 3 years ago. He ran away to Belgium and Germany, another part of the European Union, where he was protected by the European courts there. They wouldn't send Puigdemont back to Spain to send him to prison. Then the Catalans elected him to the European Parliament. If you're a Franco supporter, anti-communist, traditional Catholic Franco supporter, you become very angry maybe about this. And so I noted how the European Parliament has revoked Puigdemont's parliamentary immunity, and of course now the Spanish courts are trying to have him sent back to Spain and sent to prison. And so that was the lead up to this, and of course he's not the only one that has been elected to the European Parliament. And with the European Parliament member, you have parliamentary immunity from persecution. So the European Parliament has to decide to take away this parliamentary immunity from Puigdemont. Also, I mentioned at the last class, Jean-Marie Le Pen, right? The father of Marine Le Pen, who some are predicting will win the presidential election in France next year. They've removed the immunity of him from the European Parliament. Also, the neo-fascist party, Golden Dawn party in Greece. It's a neo-fascist party. It's openly fascist. They have a swastika as part of their symbol. And they were, until recently, the second biggest party in Greece. You're going to read about Greece in chapter on Greece in the book. This man, Ioannis Lagos, he's the figure who was elected to the European Parliament. So that was my question to you. Do you think if the European Union is a peace strategy, it's supposed to be a strategy for peace, is it a mistake? Is it making problems worse rather than better? If you support Brexit, if you support leaving the European Union, you probably say, yeah, this is too far. You push people of Europe too far to integrate. You should focus European integration only on the common market, single market. That's it. This creation of a European Parliament and a European Court to implement human rights requirements and to engage in more political human rights integration, rights for minorities, and like, that's too far. You're making things worse, not better. And when you read the chapter on Britain, that's the chapter on Britain's emphasis, that Brexit people, Brexit supporters, they supported European Union until 1992, when the Maastricht Treaty in the city of Maastricht was signed, and they decided to make the European community into the European Union in 1992, and move forward on human rights, social justice, welfare policies. That's when Margaret Thatcher and the others said, no, it's too far. And so you can predict this kind of reaction. And so that's the point made. Britain, after Britain joined the European Economic Community in 1973, it was very active in promoting the single market. But then it did not like moving forward to create the European Union. So that was my question to you. Please respond to the following statement. Europeanization makes nationalism stronger in Europe, not weaker. And that's an issue. So I asked you if I can find the exercise here. So please, what do you think? Please answer the question. Please complete the poll. So we have 7 people signed in, so 5 have answered, waiting for 2 more. I guess the standard wait will be no more than 1 minute. Okay, so we have 1 more person, and because, oh, okay, we're done there. So click here and click here. Here? Okay, so share results. So there you see the results. So, that's interesting. Most of you all agree, except for 1 person, that the European Union is making nationalism more intense rather than less intense, which is a problem. If the European Union is a strategy for peace, remember the European Union won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2012, 9 years ago. And that means it has to deal with nationalism. World War II was the big world nationalist conflict. Intense emotion, intense stereotyping, genocide as a result. And the European Union is supposed to be an answer to that. And you're saying, except for 1 who's neutral, that this might be a mistake? They've gone too far? That Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Farage in Britain were right? That's true, and that's true for a lot of people. And that's this discussion of populism, which is not, it's addressed later in the textbook. But there's a division emerge a separation, a polarization within France, Italy, Germany, Britain, all of the countries of the European Union, between people like you who love world globalization. You take this class, which means your English is really good, you're smart. Globalization for you is, as I say in the other classes, you might remember, it's like an oyster, right? So much opportunity for you. Bright, young people, smart, speak more than one language fluently. Globalization, you're going to travel around the world. You're going to go to Barcelona. And then there's everybody else in the world who's not like us in this classroom. And they are a big part of society, and they are afraid of globalization. They don't like foreigners coming into their country. They believe, rightly or wrongly, that those foreigners are taking their jobs, that the country is changing in ways they don't like. There's people that act in ways that don't act like them, that they don't like seeing them, dealing with them, interacting with them. And you know, immigrants have lots of issues. Remember, the 4 freedoms of the European single market. The European single market requires free movement of goods, free movement of services, free movement of capital, money, and free movement of labor. And up to 1 million Polish people have moved to Britain since Poland joined the European Union. And you know, I'm a son of an immigrant. My father came from Italy to the United States to escape poverty. And I have experience with immigrants, and immigrant people often have difficulties in integrating into the society. They have problems, they have challenges. They are also very creative, but they are different from the mass of the population. And if you're a typical American, you don't want all of these Mexicans coming into your society, even though they're necessary for the economy, right? Like in Korea, Chinese do difficult, dirty, and dangerous work that Koreans won't do. Are you going to harvest radishes? Are you going to harvest tomatoes in Korea? You don't want to do that. But poor people from Malaysia will. Like my father came to the US, he was a construction worker. He did this kind of work, hard work. Why? Because Americans don't want to do it. It's too hard. And if they can find an easier job, they leave. So there's a developing split in these societies between people who love globalization and Europeanization, people like you and me, and other section of society that thinks, well, this is not right. Germany is for the Germans. France is for the French. Italy is for the Italians. Bulgaria is for the Bulgarians. Poland is for the Polish. And to have all of these foreign people come in, by the way, I should say, even though up to 1 million Polish people have moved to Britain, up to 1 million Ukrainians have moved to Poland. All right, so Poland has lots of people coming in from Ukraine to work and make a living from Ukraine into Poland, which is interesting how these population movements happen. And so you have this increasing polarization in these societies. And now you have the pandemic. Now you have the stress, the fear, the anxiety of unemployment, of getting sick, of losing your job. And people want to find somebody to blame. They want to blame Emmanuel Macron. They want to blame somebody. And Marine Le Pen is appealing to those people. And she's claiming that these people who led European integration, the elite. They have big project plans to create a European Union and allowing free movement of goods, services, capital, and people, labor, and they're not so concerned about the typical Frenchman, the typical German, the typical Italian, who doesn't dream big dreams of international career and diversity and a great career with high income salary, money salary. And that these elites are arrogant. These elites who rule Europe, who are carrying out European integration, care about each other and their plan more than they care about the well-being of the typical Frenchman, the typical German, the typical Italian. And I know this is simplistic. And I know this is emotional, but this is nationalism. And as I said earlier, you cannot understand public opinion unless you understand nationalism. And politicians compete with each other for political support among the mass of the population in France or Germany and Italy. And that's where you find the most intense nationalism in 2021 is among the mass of the population. And if you're competing for votes, you're going to use nationalism. It's just a fact. Donald Trumps are everywhere. You see them everywhere. There's a version of Donald Trump in France, in Germany, in Italy. They are everywhere. And you think it can't happen? Well, it did happen. I remember 5 years ago, I thought Brexit, it's not going to pass. They're not going to vote to leave the European Union. Oh, they voted to leave the European Union. Donald Trump, he's not going to be elected. Oh my God, he's elected. Is Marine Le Pen going to be elected in France? So here's another, and there's, I'm going to relate this to the notes because you see, Europeanization is supposed to be part of the peace strategy for Europe. So what are they attempting to do in Europeanization? They're trying to build up economic and bureaucratic organization interests in globalization, Europeanization, globalization, so that there will be more and more support for peaceful cooperation against nationalists. But at the same time, it's making nationalists more mobilized. So let me just show you, right? A summary statement of these notes. See if I can do this without closing everything by accident, right? And so, yeah, here it is, right? So here's my summary statement, what? The challenges of Europeanization of the member states. Nationalism is the greatest challenge to peace, not the only challenge, but the greatest challenge to peace in international relations. Nationalist conflicts feed on each other. They react to each other. Catalan nationalists versus Spanish nationalists. One acts and the other side reacts. And then the first guy reacts to that action and you have a conflict spiral. Europeanization is the transfer of national sovereignty to the European Union. I already said, what is nationalism? We have to talk a bit about that. What predisposes a state to behave nationalistically? What does it mean to behave nationalistic? I'm going to show you, right? What do we mean when we say Poland or Japan or China are very nationalistic? I'll show you. Europeanization attempts to develop vested organizational, bureaucratic, and economic institutions in supranational EU institutions, formal and informal, including business institutions, including family ties, informal and formal. Institutions are rules and roles of behavior. That's all they are. Institutions are rules and roles of behavior that exist only up here. Okay? So they try to develop transnational European institutions. And in that way, they try to promote political transparency, right? That you in Italy or Germany or France with your history of nationalism, or Greece or Bulgaria, they don't like each other. They have nationalist conflicts, or Serbia, which will join. You don't have to be so fearful of Bulgaria if you're Greece, because you see everything going on in Bulgaria, and Bulgaria sees everything going on in Greece because of Europeanization, because of European treaties and implementation. You don't have to be fearful, because you can see the complexity of how the Bulgarians make policy. If you're a Greek and you have, I hate those Bulgarians, they want to take Macedonia, they're a bunch of primitive, backward Slavic peoples. Oh, no, I'm looking at Bulgaria, I'm looking at Greece, I'm Bulgarian looking into Greece, I'm Greek looking into Bulgaria. We participate with each other, we interact with each other, we have to see the complexity of each other's policy-making process. The opposite of stereotyping is perceiving complexity. Stereotyping is saying, Bulgaria sucks. Germany is evil. That's a stereotypical nationalist statement. France is a threat. What is this thing, France? South Korea, France, Italy, they're vast, complex organizations. That's all they are. Institutional organizations that we get emotional about because of this big forebrain. I love Korea. I love Italy. I love Japan. I love China. I hate Japan if I'm Chinese. I hate Japan if I'm Korean. The opposite of stereotyping is perceiving complexity, and Europeanization incentivizes the elite, the people that pay attention to these things, to see complexity in their neighbors. But again, this is an elite project. Europeanization is an elite project, and that's a big problem, because you're seeing a reaction to this elite project from the mass of the population that don't know English very well, that don't even have a college degree, but they see all of these people from foreign countries moving into my neighborhood and competing for jobs. What the heck is going on? France is for the French. That's why it's called France. So this is, my understanding of what we're trying to do in this course and with this textbook. At the same time, Europeanization develops vested bureaucratic and organizational and economic interests that incentivize restrictions on decisional latitude because of vested interests. So I know nationalism is not the only motivation for human behavior. Humans have lots of different motivations for their political behavior with each other, including money. That's important. But the motivations can change depending upon the context changing. If you see a deep threat from another actor, money is not going to be the dominant force driving your behavior, despite what Vladimir Lenin claimed. But so when a member state of the European Union, like Italy or France, makes foreign policy towards France or towards Bulgaria or towards Germany, the government tries to, by its nature, reconcile all of these different groups with their different motivations: businessmen and women, students, populist nationalists, religious people, LGBTQ, old people, everybody that you can imagine. They have different motivations that they're trying to satisfy in the government's policy, as they try to shape the government's policy. And that's what a government does. It tries to politically reconcile all of these conflicting pressures. And the output of that process is policy. So if Marine Le Pen becomes president of France next year, she's now saying she's not going to leave the European Union. She's not going to leave the euro because there's lots of economic vested interests, and she wants to win the elections next year. There's lots of bureaucratic and economic vested interests in France in European integration. Maybe that's the best we can do. She will maybe become president, but she won't do Brexit. Maybe. I mean, why didn't this work for Britain? Why did the British still choose to leave the European Union? I said these vested interests did not succeed in the Brexit case, or at least formally did not succeed because we don't really know what it means. 80% of the British economic connection trade with the European Union is still not regulated. They haven't come to agreement on it. So the vested interest did not succeed in the Brexit case, or at least formally did not succeed, because British populist nationalist conflict with the European Union is more heavily value-based in national grandeur. That is a reflection of stronger British nationalism. If you're a German, you're under more pressure to be ashamed of German nationalism. If you're an Italian nationalism has not been very successful. Italy was a joke in World War II in its military capabilities, right? But the British, they think they won World War II. They think they won the First World War. The European Union, it's like, have you heard of Alcoholics Anonymous? The organization for alcoholic people who can't stop drinking is called Al-Anon or Alcohol Anonymous. It's like a club for losers. It's for countries that failed. Germany, France was humiliated in World War II. Italy. The British don't think they failed. They won. They have nothing to be ashamed of. They think. They have a stronger sense of their capabilities as a consequence. They think today, unlike 40 years ago, they think today that in this context, that they have the power capability to be great in the world without having to compromise politically on their sovereignty. Nationalists, well, let's talk about experiences, collective political experiences, they make a difference. People and countries learn from their histories. So let's talk about nationalistic behavior, right? So again, what is nationalistic behavior? Nation states, like China, like US, will show a stronger inclination to see a threat from others and a greater tendency to see that threatener in stereotypical terms, simplistic stereotypical terms. And that includes China, Russia, and Japan, right? A greater likelihood, and Britain, a greater likelihood exists that the leaders of a nation state will advance and seriously consider the option to expand state influence at the expense of other actors. That's the point here being that the state of the nation is equated with the nation in a nation state. Okay, what point am I trying to make here? It's human nature that you, me, I want to like myself. What's your name? Are you Park Subin? Okay, Junyoung. Junyoung, you want to like yourself. You want to like, I want to have a positive self-image, right? 2, I tend to self-identify with groups of people. They are my in-groups, and I understand who I am largely through my perceived membership in groups. Who am I? Who am I? What else am I? I belong to other groups. American, Catholic, white. Ohio, we don't know that. I'm from the state of Ohio. I'm Italian American. I'm a professor. And I can go on and on
listing all the groups I belong to. If I'm a typical person, the strongest groups I feel most intensely about are my family and my nation. My primary terminal self-identity. I feel primary intensity with it. Like I will defend my sisters and brothers and mother, and I will defend America with my life possible. If I'm a typical citizen of a nation state. And in a nation state in which, like Poland, like France, the overwhelming majority of people living in that state all share the same primary terminal self-identity community, they will tend to equate the state with the nation. And the leaders of the nation are the government. The government officials, they are the leaders of the state, so they lead the nation. So Emmanuel Macron is the leader of the French. Remember, France exists only up here. Vladimir Putin is the leader of the Russians. Xi Jinping is the leader of the Chinese. And so if the state gains glory, the nation gains glory, and I gain glory. I get a happy face. I feel good about me because my nation is doing great. And just to continue on here, because I want to show you what the book Europeanization is trying to deal with, because they don't really have a strong theory of nationalism in the book. I do. I got a good theory from my professor, but a greater tendency among the publics of nation states. And again, remember, Soviet Union was not a nation state. 50% of the population of the old Soviet Union was not Russian. Russia is a nation state. Soviet Union was not a nation state. Yugoslavia was not a nation state. The Republic of Congo is a multi-ethnic state. Philippines is not a nation state. Vietnam is a nation state. Myanmar is a compound identity state, but 2/3 of the population of Myanmar is Burmese. And they tend to equate Myanmar with them. And anybody else who's not Burmese is a threat to being Burmese. The Kachins, the Rohingya, the Arakanese. Anyway, the people in a nation state will display a greater concern with maintaining face and dignity. So how the leaders of the state are treated by other states is really important for these people. And they will show a greater willingness to take action to rectify the perceived insult to the Chinese by the unfair treatment of China in the United Nations or by Donald Trump. The public of a nation state will show a greater likelihood to be susceptible to grandeur interests. Again, the best example, Nazi Germany. Right? Just to beat up France for the sake of beating up France. Militarily, on the battlefield. In order to enhance the power of the state, effective appeals by state leaders to the citizenry to make sacrifices may occur, and leaders of nation states will show greater effectiveness in their appeals in this regard. So the leaders of the state will show a greater ability to mobilize the population to fight wars, to make sacrifices, to defend Serbia and Serbs outside of Serbia, or to add Crimea back to Russia, which was taken by the communists and given to Ukraine, which was wrong. And the sacrifices include a willingness on the part of the citizen to become part of the armed forces. The military will fight better compared to non-nation states. The commitment of the military to the defense of the state will be more intense. And this is important today. The citizenry of a nation state will demonstrate a greater likelihood to grant state leaders a greater decisional latitude in defending state interests. So if Vladimir Putin decides, I'm going to take Crimea from Ukraine, the Russian people will go, yay, take Crimea! And giving it back will be politically impossible. despite the sanctions of the European Union on Russia. They're not going to give up Crimea. They're just going to become more and more angry and resentful of the economic sanctions of the European Union on Russia. Same problem with the US, but the citizenry will show a lesser likelihood of granting them decisional latitude to accept defeats or loss of face. How is America going to get out of Afghanistan? They've been there for 20 years. They've spent hundreds of billions of dollars, had thousands of casualties, killed who knows how many Afghans, and they're just going to leave? If the Americans leave, the Afghan government will collapse tomorrow. I guarantee it. How? If I'm an American, no, we don't lose. If my country loses in Vietnam, I lose. I am humiliated. And I don't know how Biden's going to carry this out. And what is the role of the European Union? The United States is pushing the European Union to support more NATO forces in Afghanistan, more NATO forces in Iraq to save America's projects. Remember, the European Union itself is not a nation state. It's a multinational confederation. So, that's the challenge of nationalism. And again, the best example is Nazi Germany. Just to summarize, nation states are more likely to see the world around them, collectively speaking, in terms of threats and opportunities for the nation. They'll be less likely to talk about global climate change and human rights. They'll think about, what does it mean for America? What are the threats and opportunities for America? Remember, America, Germany, Korea, China, they exist only here. They will tend to see those threats and opportunities in stereotypical terms, in more simplistic, and simplistic means bad. Simplistic means stupid. You'll make policy mistakes. They'll tend to see perceive those sources of threats and opportunities to Germany or America or France in stereotypical terms, and they will tend to overestimate their power capabilities. And the best example, again, is Nazi Germany. Think about that. Germany, the land of Beethoven, well, that's Austria, or Heidegger or Hegel, they tried to conquer the world. They actually believed, under the Hitler leadership, that Germany had the possibility that it had the power capability compared to the rest of the world to conquer it. That's nationalism. It makes you crazy. It makes you crazy. And it's in our DNA. Along with our big four brains. And this is what Europeanization confronts. And anybody who underestimates nationalism has got to explain to me, how do you explain Donald Trump? I mean, we have this belief that somehow America's exceptional. America doesn't go crazy like Germany. So, again, I wanted to talk about their tables here. Here is a checklist. Well, here is the list of stereotypes. You can predict the kind of stereotypes collective organizations like states will tend to perceive. Enemy versus barbarian versus imperial versus colonial. With each of these policy perception, with each of these stereotypes, there's patterns of behavior. Remember, you're going to, and people, remember, people want to feel good about myself. I want to feel good about me. You want to feel good about you. And if I see an opportunity to do something I really want to do, I'll make myself believe that what I'm doing to you is for your own good. Like, let's say he's the Soviet Union. I'm America, you're Korea. I'm going to occupy you and control you, and I might have to do some bad things because there might be people like Kim Il-sung who work for him. So Syngman Rhee might not be the nicest guy. He might do bad things, but, you know, he's a modernizer. He's modernizing Korea while the communists are appealing to these silly Korean peasants about socialism. Take all of the land from the wealthy and give the land to the peasants. Socialism. And you're a silly little peasant who's not civilized. So I need to support somebody who will modernize you. Whether you are Syngman Rhee, the Shah of Iran, Ferdinand Marcos, Salvador, Augusto Pinochet in Chile, all sorts of dictators. You're a modernizer against him. I mean, you're causing all this trouble, you Soviet Union, with your communist spies in KGB. So that's called nationalistic universalism. But I just wanted to highlight how typically everybody has to justify to each other and to themselves why they do what they want to do in a way that makes them feel good about doing whatever it is they want to do. So their enemy is evil. Of course, I'm doing bad things to fight the enemy, but do you understand how evil the Soviet Union is? Do you understand how evil communism is? I mean, sometimes you have to do a bad thing to avoid a horrible thing, like Kim Il-sung taking over all of Korea. And of course, there are positive stereotypes too. Ally. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. If we share the same enemy, then I'm going to like you, even if you're a bastard. Right? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I will stereotype them as an ally. This is political psychology. This is the application of social psychology to politics. And so you see these are the behavior patterns. I want to make sure I get to the notes because you're reading the book, not this. But I just wanted to show you to try to understand what the book is attempting to try to understand in terms of the problems it faces with nationalism. Like I say, if you're a proud Korean and you're smart and you speak English well, you've got a bachelor's degree, you're going to do the soft power Korea focus. You're going to love soft power. But if you're some Korean person who's not very smart, you're not going to self-identify Korea with bringing in more foreigners to work here from Malaysia or Vietnam because they're going to take my job. Again, more a discussion of the kind of behavior patterns we see if you on the basis of these stereotypes. So how do you know if a country is going to behave nationalistically? Well, look here, Korea is an exceptional situation, right? And this is important. You see, the European Union is an elite-led project. Double negative. Western Europe, not Eastern Europe, Western Europe. This is Emmanuel Macron. This is leadership of France until the present, of Germany until the present, of Italy until the present. They want change, but they do not express and justify the change to their voters in terms of, we need to make Italy great again. We need to carry out radical change in our country to make Germany great again, like Donald Trump, make America great again. They don't talk in those terms. They talk about change in terms of we have to promote European values. We have to promote human rights. We've got to be the leaders on fighting global climate change. That's the big focus in the European Union, that we're the leaders in global climate change. We are the main providers of humanitarian aid. They promote the change-oriented elite, the leaders of Europe, in terms of appealing and justifying their change reform policies, do not phrase those appeals in terms of making France glorious again. Double negative. But, you know, look at Korea. Korea is still fighting the Korean War. We want to change Pali Pali in Korea. Pali Pali. Why? So that we can reunify Korea and make Korea great again and beat the Japanese. Double plus, East Asia, China, Japan, Korea. We want change because China will rise again from its humiliation of 200 years of Western and Japanese humiliation. Same and true as Eastern Europe. Why do you want to change Poland? To make us proud of Poland again. To return Poland, Bulgaria to Europe. That's what I heard so often when I was in Bulgaria from 1994 to 2009. You have to transform this Stalinist country. Think about North Korea. What do you have to do to make North Korea into South Korea? That's what they confronted in Bulgaria, in Poland. We've got this communist country and we have to transform it. And it's going to be so hard, so difficult because of 50 years of communism. But I appeal to you, the people of Poland, that we must make these sacrifices, undergo this terrible stress, this terrible, difficult change, because we need to make Poland European again. We need to make Poland return to Europe, return Bulgaria to Europe, become European. Vote for me. Do it for your children and your grandchildren and future generations of Bulgarians, people who don't even exist yet. I know it's difficult, but we must do it. So mass political participation, it's pretty much double plus everywhere except in Africa. These people are heavily still traditional and parochial in terms of their identities with clan and family and tribe, right? Perception of viability of a sovereign state for the aspiring national community. Will your independent nation state, if you're trying to break away from China to create Turkestan, will it be defendable? Will it have enough economic resources? Look at China, right? Of course. China is 1/5 the human race. The economy, of course. Your perception of your history, again, double plus in Asia. I mean, America doesn't have a holiday celebrating its language like Hangul Day in Korea. Hangul, Koreans are so proud of Hangul, right? The perception of your language being unique and special, whether it be Chinese or Hangul, your culture being unique, your history being unique. Do you have the belief, because this is all about beliefs, do you have a belief that back 1,000, 2,000 years ago, we had an ancient or medieval golden age when we were so great, and at the establishment of civilization, we had a golden era, a golden age. That's an indicator of nationalism. Jews, in the Bible, right? Chinese, the Arabs. The Quran is written in Arabic. God speaks Arabic. They actually believe God speaks Arabic, right? Also, do you have a memory of a genocidal event? That there was a time when somebody tried to kill all of us? Armenians, Jews, Serbs, Bulgarians. Bulgarians will tell you, for 500 years, we were under the Turkish yoke. This part of the Muslim, Ottoman, Turkic, Asian empire. You know what a yoke is? You put it on a buffalo to We were under the Turkish yoke. The Turks enslaved us. They raped our women. I heard that repeatedly in Bulgaria. Yeah, but the Turks used to rape all of our women. That's why we look so diverse. You know, we have dark-skinned Bulgarians because the Turks raped all of our women. I was like, well, you don't like Turks, do you? The Greeks. Yeah, our problems in Greece. You're going to read about Greece and its weak state, corrupt state. Well, 500 years under the Turks. What do you expect? We were under those Asian, Muslim, Turkic invaders. Yeah, this is stereotyping. Stereotyping is ugly, 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 ugly. This is how they talk. Do you have a memory of or African Americans, right? I mean, if you're African nationalism in the United States is interesting, but you know, that memory that, you know, that at one time we were all owned and bred like dogs. We were slaves. That's comparable to a genocidal memory. I mean, and you Koreans, right? That the Japanese tried to erase you. You had to adopt Japanese names. You weren't allowed to speak Korean. A history, a collective memory of a genocidal experience. And identity complementarity. So, where's Korea? Well, it's a silly question. We all know where Korea is. The Korean nation is in Korea. There might be some debate about Yanbian province across the border. I don't have territory here. I guess territory would be part of this automatically. But when the Chinese government 25 years ago announced that, did you know that Goguryeo was a Chinese kingdom? And the Korean government went, no. That Korea or Japan is an ethnic cultural community and a racial community and a religious community. And the identities, these identities overlap pretty much perfectly in the Japanese. Japan's the best case. Japan is a self-perceived religious, spiritual community with combinations of Zen and Confucian elements, right? Korea also, it's a mix of animist, Christian, and Buddhist traditions that are all mixed together to make Korea unique and special as a spiritual community. It's a race is subjective, right? Koreans will tell you about how their eyes are different from the Japanese and how they look different. This is all, I'm not saying this is objective, it's subjective, and a culture community. So this tells you you're going to see nationalist conflicts in Asia. Starting when Lee Myung-bak goes to Dokka Island, and then the Japanese respond and the Chinese respond and claiming all these islands in East Asia, right? Conflict spiral. But the key point about this class for Europe is that Europe was the place where the nation state was created. The first nation states emerged in the late 18th century with the French Revolution, right? So West Europe is strong here among the mass of the population, but this is the key to Europeanization. It's an elite project, but the mass of the population in France or in Italy or Germany, they still tend to be nationalistic. And they vote in elections. Yeah. I'm thinking a lot about those things, and I think that you're right, that the American South is the center of American national identity that is different from like German or Japan identity, because America was founded by immigrants, right? Immigrant society. So, you know, what is the core group, the core culture that establishes the German state? Well, it's easy, German. It's called the Federal Republic of Germany. What is the core culture that is the foundation of the system of authority norms about right and wrong behavior? You know, what you learn from the time you were born, how to speak correctly, how to act correctly. Your mom and dad teach you that. That's culture. That's one way to understand cultures, what you learn in early socialization. What is the core culture of Italy? Italian. But what is the core culture of the United States of America? So there is one, it's WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. And it's that group into which Germans and French and Swedish and other Northern Europeans assimilated pretty easily. And then Italians, Greeks, Southern Europeans, up until 100 years ago, they were not considered white, but we have assimilated. White Italian Americans have assimilated into the WASP culture. So I can't even speak Italian. My father would not speak Italian around me. He was afraid I would suffer if I spoke English with an Italian accent. There would be a problem. So I have this funny name. That's my Italian identity. But also America was founded, it was a slave republic. It was founded with slavery, African slavery, to exploit the resources of early commodity capitalism. That was a wonderful question because, as I said earlier, it's human nature. I want to feel good about myself. So I will perceive the world in a way that is self-serving. And that means I will see some things and not see others. So we tend to see the world in a way that allows us to feel good about doing whatever we want to do. So America was intimately connected with slavery. You brought in African slaves to do the work that Europeans and others didn't want to do, like working on tobacco plantations and later cotton plantations to supply the early industrial revolution for textiles, right? And the British had no problem with that because they wanted to make money off their colonies in Britain, in North America, and also in the Caribbean where they were raising sugarcane, for sugar and molasses and rum. And people tend to build up ways of understanding the world that allow them to not see what they don't want to see or to justify the world in ways that make them feel good about doing what they want to do. So Americans, some way they might say, well, slavery was good because it allowed Africans to learn about American culture and Jesus Christ and Christianity. So, they wouldn't be pagans. And also, you could say, and this is what I'm working on these days, that America is a very focused culture on consumption, on getting what you want now on a local level. They don't like big government. They say, on a attitudinal level, this is on the level of attitudes. It's not accurate and it's not complex thinking, but when you go to a doctor's office, the doctor takes a hammer and he hits your knee here. What happens? You go like this, right? You don't even think about it. Americans, big government, bad. Big government, bad. Big government, bad. They always have associated big government with human rights interventions to protect the human rights of Africans. And so there's this strong resentment against big government because they were focused on controlling these enslaved Africans and Indians. And they don't think about this consciously. This is inherited over many generations and decades and centuries of time. And that is expressed rhetorically and articulated to justify to each other and ourselves the way the system exists, the way the system works. So there is this traditional distaste and dislike for big government because big government intervention means you become aware of the fact on a national level, more aware that there's a big section of the society that is not being treated equally. And Americans don't want to believe that because it makes them feel bad. And people don't want to feel bad. Things change. Slavery was abolished. But to talk about systemic racism, the fact that black people are 15% of the population, 12% of the population, and 30% of the prisoners in prisons, that black people are poor, that Americans don't want to hear about social justice. And that's most strong in the South. And it's not a coincidence in the South because that was the heart of the Confederacy. That's where slavery was most strongly based. That's where cotton plantations and tobacco plantations could thrive, was there. And that's the base of the Republican Party today. The Republican Party is the party of white nationalism. The Republican Party is the party of white supremacy. But this all goes back to Leon Festinger and Fritz Heider describing what's called motivated reasoning. I explain and justify to you and me myself the world in ways that allow me to feel good about doing whatever I want to do. And this goes back to Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, you know who Sigmund Freud was? The psychoanalyst. He was an Austrian theorist of psychology. He was the one that gave us the term subconscious. What's below my conscious? What's hidden? He highlighted how people themselves do not know consciously what is really driving them. That's why he said we have to study our dreams, because when we dream, what we deeply want comes out, right? People lie to themselves and they lie to each other all the time. Because I know what I have to say for you to like me. I got to say I like human rights. Yay, human rights. Freedom for the person. Yay. Who's against freedom? Nobody's against freedom. Nobody's against human rights. So I see the world in a way that allows me to justify my policy preferences, including my self-identity preferences. Immigrants are bad. Immigrants bring crime. Immigrants, they're causing more crime. They don't cause more crime. But if you want less immigration, you make yourself, oh no, they cause more crime. Oh yeah, the evidence shows immigrants in America do less crime than Americans. No, it's not true. These people, they deny science. They deny climate change. They deny COVID-19 because it all requires global cooperation to address climate change, and COVID-19 requires global cooperation, European Union cooperation, United Nations cooperation. Then we have to talk about human rights and threats to people's survival and the well-being of America depending upon the well-being of Africans and Asians. And they don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear you. I'm not listening. I'm not listening. No, 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 no. It's at that level. Homo sapiens. So where states rank on this shows you their predisposition to engage in nationalism. And I already highlighted what that predisposition looks like. And so yeah, you know, these states, these are post-colonial states. These are created by the Dutch, the French, the British, the Spanish, the Portuguese. They weren't created by these people living there with these weird boundaries between Indonesia and Malaysia and Mali and Niger. And people's identities are with their tribe. Tribes are ethnic groups. Tribes are ethnic groups. But they also want to take control of the state because the state has guns. The police have weapons. The army has guns. You have access to wealth. But your loyalty and concern is not for the state of Mali. It's for the Tuaregs. It's for the Muslims. It's for the little groups inside those entities. And we call that corruption, corruption, corruption. These states emerged over hundreds of years. You know, the Kingdom of France became the Republic of France. England became, you know, Kingdom of England became England. But these states were created in the 19th century by bargainers and negotiators in London and Paris between the governments dividing up Africa. So, back to Europe. So that's the challenge. And let me show you, okay? This is from yesterday. Again, predicting that Marine Le Pen might well win next year. In 2015, Ms. Le Pen expelled her own father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who founded the party and had a long history of playing down the Holocaust. While she popularized dog whistles. You know what a dog whistle is? You call a dog, but with the sound so high you can't hear it, but it's implied. So she talks about France turning savage. In other words, all these Muslims from Algeria and now from Africa coming into France. She constantly stayed clear of explosive language, conjuring up a supposed great replacement. Because remember, nobody wants to believe they're against human rights. Most people do not want to be racist. I'm not racist. I'm not racist. Oh, I know you're not racist. I'm not racist too, Marine Le Pen says. She consciously stayed away from explosive language, conjuring up a supposed great replacement of France's white population by African and Muslim immigrants. In 2018, she rebranded the National Front as the more inclusive rally. I mean, that sounds like something out of World War II, like the Germans' National Front that they established and their collaborators. Still, the party wants to toughen migration policies for foreign students and reduce net immigration by 20-fold. It also wants to ban the public wearing of the Muslim veil. In Switzerland, they just passed a law that Muslim women cannot wear a veil in public because it obstructs recognition. This person is a National Rally politician. He's now the leader of the government, the city government in this town of Perpignan. So the phrase they use here is that, and this is highlighted in the book, that riding high in the polls ahead of the next presidential election, feeling they've won the battle over ideas, smelling blood in the Elysee Palace, leaders of France's far right cocked their eyes across the land at perhaps the one thing standing between them and power: beavers. So you know what a beaver is? It's an animal, I don't know if you have it in Asia, but in North America that looks like a raccoon dog, and that swims and builds dams out of wood to block up water so it can raise its families. That until today, as part of the European consensus, the right-wing French, the left-wing French always collaborated to keep these far-right people out. And they act like beavers. They create a dam to do whatever is necessary to keep anti-European, Eurosceptic parties out of power. And the beavers are breaking. These beavers that would always do whatever it can to stop French far-right nationalism. They're starting to crack. That is what French call the voters who, in time and again, have cast political differences aside and put in power anyone but far-right candidates, raising a dam against them as real beavers do against predators. Voters did precisely that in 2014 in Perpignan, a medieval city of pastel-colored buildings on the Mediterranean near the border with Spain. And the reason this is highlighted is because this person, Aliot, it was the former partner of Marine Le Pen. They lived together. And now he got elected as mayor of this town. And in other words, they're acting rationally, they're acting reasonably while they're mayors of this town. A victory for Ms. Le Pen would be earth-shattering for France and all of Europe. It has been an article of faith in Europe and France that a party whose leadership has long shown flashes of anti-Semitism, Nazi nostalgia, and anti-immigrant bigotry would never make it to the country's two-stage presidential electoral juggernaut. But Marine Le Pen came in second in 2017. She may still be a relative long shot given the party's history in France, but for now, perhaps not as long as she once was. Recent polls show her matching Mr. Macron in the first round of next year's presidential contest and trailing by a few points in the second round runoff. In a poll released Thursday, 48% of respondents said Ms. Le Pen would probably be France's next president, up 7% compared with half a year ago. Now, another point about nationalism, as my professor said, the same guy who wrote that book I was showing you, nationalism tends to emerge from being latent to becoming salient at a time of accelerating social change. The speed of social change in institutions and conditions, if it accelerates in the change process, you see more nationalistic behavior. And boy, do we see change happening with the COVID-19 pandemic. I mean, tremendous changes in society. And so this might be another reason why Marine Le Pen will win next year. In 2014, remember I showed you double negative. The European elite is opposed to nationalism. Now they cannot resist anymore, evidently. In 2014, many voters on the left and right had successfully united in a Republican front against Mr. Aliot, the same way they raised a dam against Ms. Le Pen. But in the intervening years, Aliot won. He won handily in 2020, and they already mentioned that they used to live together. Miss Marine Le Pen has softened the party's longtime populist economic agenda. You know, populism is, the elite is corrupt, the elite is corrupt, the elite is not working for the well-being of the French, the elite cares about itself, bad. That's what European integration and Europeanization, it's an elite-driven project, right? She has softened the long-time party's populist economic agenda, for example, by dropping a proposal to exit the euro. She says she's not going to do that anymore. And by promoting green reindustrialization, while holding on to or even toughening the party's core hardline positions on immigration, Islam, and security. And Macron, because he's worried, has been moving to the right. Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, is talking more like a populist, more like a nationalist, because he's worried about what will happen next year. But the shift by Macron also helps destigmatize the far right, or at least many of its messages, argue National Rally leaders. Some members of Mr. Macron's own party and political analysts. Mr. Macron's strategy may have the unintended consequence of helping the National Rally in the decades-long struggle to become a normal party, they say. The fact that Macron is now talking about Islamo-separatism, that the Islamists want to be separate from society, it legitimizes what we've been saying, Mr. Aliot said. These are the people who've been saying for 30 years, be careful, they're the National Rally, they're fascists because they target Muslims. All of a sudden, they're talking like us. Mr. Macron and his ministers in recent months have tried to appropriate the extreme right's issues with new policies and dog whistles, talking tough on crime. Yo, immigrants, they bring crime. and pushing through a bill to limit filming of the police, which is dropped after protests, and one to crack down on what they call Islamist separatism. In a recent televised debate, the Interior Minister, Gerard Damian, even accused Ms. Le Pen of being shaky and softer than we are on Islamism. They have turned to identity politics, ordering an investigation into Islamo-leftism at French universities and other so-called American-inspired ideas that they say threaten to undermine French values. So lots of college professors talk in the way I was just talking to you about the foundations of America on white supremacy. And that makes a lot of people upset. Many Americans, they don't want to hear that. No! Poor people are poor because it's their fault. I'm not responsible. You're making me mad. I love my country. I'm tired of hearing how America's a bad country. That's nationalism. The more we go on their ground, the stronger we make them. Jean-Michel Mies, a national lawmaker for Mr. Macron's party, said at the national rally. So their leaders are very pleased because in the end, we're legitimating their campaign themes. By Macron talking this way, he's making Le Pen look like, well, they talk the same. So why don't we vote for her? Let's get somebody new and fresh in there. The way the Americans voted for Trump. Let's get somebody different. Somebody to shake things up. Nicholas Laborg, a political scientist specializing on the national rally, said adopting the far right's themes has often backfired. What they're currently doing is campaigning for Marine Le Pen. Yeah. Like I said, even as Mr. Macron has portrayed himself as the best candidate to protect France from the far right, polls show voters may be growing weary of being asked to vote against a candidate. Vote against Donald Trump. Vote against somebody. Why don't we vote for somebody because we like them? Let's do that for once. Let's let her be in power. It'll make things better in France in the long run. The way people talked about Trump. We need something different. And you know, okay, just to go on here, Mr. Laborg, the political scientist, said that Mr. Alliot had also won over conservative upper-income voters by adopting a mainstream economic message, the same strategy adopted by Ms. Le Pen. Since taking over the party a decade ago, she has worked hard at de-diabolization, de-demonizing the party. She got rid of her father, who was, old. I already mentioned dog whistles. And Mr. Alliot, the mayor of Perpignan, has hired more police. People say, yeah, police, man, we need more police. No more, we got to get rid of this crime. The attacks by the president's ministers against Islamo-leftism and scholars on feminism, that professors are sympathetic to these Islamic terrorists who killed all of those people at Charlie Hebdo and at that Paris nightclub. Those people are being defended by college professors, Islamo-leftists. Scholars on feminism, gender, and race had fundamentally changed her view of government, she said, this Camila Rose. I have the impression that their enemies are no longer the extreme right at all, but it's us, people on the left. So, please respond to the following statement. If Marine Le Pen and the National Rally win the presidential elections in 2022, France will leave the European Union. So let me go back to Zoom. Here. And close this, click here. Okay, and assuming she wins, will France leave do Brexit? Will there be a Frexit? Please vote. 3 more. 2 more. Two more. Has everybody voted? Oh no. One of our students is going to the bathroom. She's going to miss the vote. Five, four, three, two, 1, 0. And click here. No, here. This one. So you disagree. Okay, so let's break up into breakout rooms and tell me as a group what you think of this. So that's not the breakout group. Oh, did I just, don't want to do the wrong thing here. How do I make that bigger? I didn't mean to minimize. How do I make it? How do I make it bigger again? This one? Huh? This one? This one? What bar? This one. I just want to make it big. I want to go back to the old. Well, okay. I wanted to call up the breakout rooms. So breakout rooms is here.
Never did that before, but maybe if you click that, the 3 dots.
Oh, thank you. Breakout room.
That one.
Okay. So let's form into, so we have some people attending virtually. Can you come up with a position on whether or not you think, why you think France will or will not leave the European Union if Marine Le Pen wins the presidency? Because I think it's 50-50. I mean, I think French people are tired, you know, and again, everybody's talking like Marine Le Pen now. So click here. Okay, so please, the first person in each group, try to get your group together as to your position on whether or not France will leave the European Union. I mean, keep in mind, Emmanuel Macron said a year or 2 ago that if the French had a referendum on leaving the European Union, it might well have passed. He made that statement last year. Emmanuel Macron did. So the first person, each group, can you organize your group to come up with a position as to why you think, and can express why you think your group position is right? I know, you know, some people are here, some aren't. I mean, she's already said she's not going to leave the European Union. She says she doesn't want to leave the euro. Do you think there's going to be some de-Europeanization? If they don't leave the European Union, okay, but are they going to go backward on Europeanization? Like they're going to limit immigration. They want to reduce immigration by 20 times. They don't want all these international students coming to France. That doesn't sound very Europeanized. Or is it? Who's in group 3? Park Chung-hyun? Oh, are you all by yourself? Park Chung-hyun, you're all by yourself, huh? It looks like you're by yourself. This person is not joined yet. Were you trying to call them on the phone? That's a good idea. I like how we try to use all the technology. Yeah, I don't know about this person. Park Subin, she said she's sick. Okay, I think because we have to close this in 5 minutes. Okay, so you got 60 seconds to finish up. Ten seconds. Okay, so let me flip a coin to see who's going to go first. And I thought I brought some coins. Yes, I did. Okay, so heads, it's group one. There's heads. Okay, so Sung Hun Im Am Sung Un. What are your group's thoughts?
French have good relations with other countries as a member of the European Union, and if they leave the European Union right after the elections, then they will have like harder time like economically and politically. And also, I looked up some statistics, and French export and imports to the European Union is about the same. So if they leave the European Union, it will actually damage their economy than like it will benefit their economy.
Yeah, I think that's a picture you paint of basically the European Union become more conflictual. There'll be more conflict among the member states with the European Commission also in the European Parliament. But there's not going to be a breakdown. I mean, we can look, for example, with Hungary. Hungary has refused to take in any immigrants, despite what the European Union decided. Hungary, the European Union did pull out Frontex officers who were monitoring the border and took them out of Hungary. Hungary is not going to be punished for its behavior because Poland will not allow it. But it's still in the European Union. Hungary, by the way, has approved the Russian and Chinese vaccines for COVID-19. So they have lots of vaccines. That will probably expand to include more of Europe, that kind of relationship. But it's hard to imagine them adopting the banking system, the European Central Bank will still be under the control of the European Central Bank Governing Board and the President of the European Central Bank. I mean, I'm trying to imagine scenarios how conflict would escalate in a conflict spiral. Say if, for example, France decides to just disregard its budget restrictions to maintain economic and monetary union through the Stability and Growth Pact. They don't meet the Stability and Growth Pact obligations anyway, and they've already agreed not to do it, follow it anyway, with the European Union going to borrow 750 billion euros and just give it to the countries without the expectation that they have to pay it back. So there'll be more conflict, more friction, more rhetorical conflict, but on an economic level, you've got these deep, big, expansive, vested economic interests in European integration. And these people have money, these people vote in elections, and they tend to keep their voice down. They're not the ones talking about Islamo-separatism, Islamo-leftism. They're not the ones, they're talking about, I'm a businessman, you're the government, you want to help our government, our economy do well. Let me tell you what I want you to do. And you're going to listen to me because I help run the economy. And we're not as exciting as the people condemning Islamo-leftism, but we're powerful. These vast interests are like they're hidden. But why didn't that keep Britain in the European Union? That's the counterpoint. How come Brexit succeeded? If these vast economic interests are so big and so powerful in integration? Well, because people, they respond. You shouldn't have referendums. No more referendums. They haven't had a referendum on any of the big changes in Europe since 2009. The British had Brexit referendum, but they've made so many changes in Europe since the financial crisis, and they've all done it without any referendums. Again, the British are the ones who are not at the double negative. The British elite, they think they won World War II, that they're going to build a global influence to the memory of the British Empire and its most famous offspring, the United States of America. Britain has already applied to join the Comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership. Who belongs to the Comprehensive Trans-Pacific Partnership? Not South Korea, but Japan does, and Canada and Australia, part of the British Empire. We'll make Britain great again. Britain great again by building upon the foundations of the old empire. Okay. So much of politics is becoming performance art. It's performance. It's like being on a stage in a play. You have to stop this. I don't. I'm not going to get recorded for this class. Click here.
Let's stop.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead.
I think you have to close the first.